Now we got to take the big leap. Where is evolution going? So if you look at a classical theorist, they'll notice that evolution moves from simplicity to complexity. Now that's of course true, but is that the goal, the telos of evolution? Is just more complexity? I mean, ask anyone, hey, would you like more complexity in your life? That's exciting. So it's not just complexity, it's so much deeper than that. Complexity is a kind of sterilized, sanitized, homogenized word to describe something which is stunningly gorgeous and alive. Right? Evolution is moving to more and more complexity, but complexity means more and more connectivity, more and more intimacy, more and more nodes of interconnectivity whose interior is intimacy, more and more fields of ever deeper allurement, more and more aliveness, right? More and more love, more and more care and concern, more and more creativity, right? More and more, we go from dirt to Dante, right? We go from shit to Shakespeare, right? We're going from molten rocks to Mozart and Michelangelo, right? So reality is an evolution of the good, the true, and the beautiful. Now, it's not a straight line of evolution. Evolution meanders. Evolution follows its way. There's an inherent, ceaseless creativity to cosmos. And one of the things we realize is that there's not Jack living on Mars who's calling herself or himself God, who's looking down at the planet and saying, okay, let's do stage one, got that done, stage two, and it's all happening in a few seconds. That's not how it works. What we realize is that the infinite discloses itself in the finite. The unmanifest, which lives before all, right? If everything disappears, there's still spirit. If everything's gone, there's still the no thing that underlies everything. The unmanifest decides to manifest. The unmanifest decides to manifest. Infinity loves finitude, right? How did Blake say it? Infinity loves the productions of time, right? Infinity desires finitude. Infinity yearns to create expressions of infinity, disclosed in the finite. The infinite seeks intimacy, and the infinite discloses its intimate nature in the finite. Like, wow, right? Like, wow. And all of a sudden I begin to feel at home in reality for the first time. And I realize I'm living in an intimate universe, and the intimate universe lives in me, but not as a metaphor, as reality. The entire intimate universe, from hydrogen atoms directly from the moment of the Big Bang, to all the elementary particles that come from the supernovas, to every evolutionary advance. But when we say evolutionary advance, even that, right, we're actually hiding the truth. An evolutionary advance is the evolution of intimacy, right? It's a new expression of allurement. It's a new dance of fire and ecstasy, right? It's a new, we call it a mutation. You're almost like, oh God, you want to be a mutation? What's a mutation? Mutation means a new way to make love. Oh, let's make love this way. Let's create something new. Let's try a new position and see if we can create a new protein molecule. Right? Let's birth a new gorgeousness. That's what reality is doing, right? Reality is this unfolding of this great love story. But again, not an ordinary love story, not a Harlequin romance, but rather the Harlequin romance is an expression, right, of the underlying love story, the intimate love story of reality reaching for higher and higher levels of interconnectivity, of intimacy, of mutuality, recognition, union, and embrace. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that it's all sweetness and light. Clearly, in reality, you have love, the evolution of love, right? Evolution as love in action takes place through this process of attraction, right? Allurement, attraction, and repulsion, right? Autonomy. So there's attraction, repulsion, attraction, repulsion. And for example, the Earth and the Sun are in relationship to each other. They're having an erotic relationship. So there's attraction, there's a gravitational field, then there's centrifugal force, there's repulsion. And love actually is in that dialectical perfect balance between attraction and repulsion. And that's true about the Earth and the Sun. It's true about everything, right? If we're too close, we fuse and we disappear and we're obliterated and we're annihilated. And if we're too far apart, we alienate and then we dissociate and die. So either side, too much autonomy becomes alienation. Too much communion becomes fusion and death. So there's death on either side. The nature of reality is this mysterious dance, right? This dance of ineluctable mystery. And anyone who thinks they've worked out the mystery, walk away, they're scary, right? They're scary, right? There's always uncertainty in the midst of our certainties. There's always certainties in the midst of our uncertainty. And the whole game is a dance between certainty and uncertainty. Our uncertainties, which are legion, which are manifold and multiplied every day, our uncertainties don't undermine our certainties. Our certainty is we know reality is meaningful. We know reality is intimate. We know reality seeks more intimacy and seeks more joy and seeks more goodness and seeks more truth and seeks more beauty. And we know there's a progression. We know reality is the progressive deepening of intimacies from asexual reproduction, which comes a little later in the evolutionary chain, but even before, way before then, you have the quarks coming together in allurement, and you've got the atoms, right, dancing with each other and loving each other open and joining and creating larger wholes, and it goes all the way up the evolutionary chain. And then, of course, there's annihilation, right? There's death. There's the coming apart of things. But the arc of the cosmos, right, leans towards love, right? The arc of the cosmos moves towards greater and greater intimacies. And you can't understand reality ever in the frame of a day or a year or even a lifetime. Where do we know each other from? You look in someone's eyes and say, is it this lifetime? Is it a previous lifetime? Is it 2 lifetimes before? We're actually bound by invisible lines of connection, invisible intimacies that bring us together. So that's our framework, that's our context. And all of that now comes together as we begin to try and really understand who is Homo Amor. Let's invoke the new human. Let's invoke the new humanity. And we invoke the new humanity not by prescribing her, right? Not by legislating her, but by describing her so beautifully, with so much passion, with so much devotion, with so much precision, with so much prose, with so much poetry, with so much potency, with so much accuracy, that in the description, in the art of the description, she's evoked. But she's evoked not just out there, she's evoked in us, right? We can only invoke Homo Amor by becoming Homo Amor. We can only be what we're willing to become. So we have to be willing to become Homo Amor. So who is Homo Amor? Homo Amor first is the realization that I'm not separate from anything else or anyone else. Enlightenment means intimacy with all things. I'm not separate. Nothing exists independently of everything. I'm not just a separate self, I'm true self. And true self means the total number of true selves in the world is one. And this realization of true self isn't limited to this elite of some Jewish mystics and a couple of Buddhist monks and some Kashmir Shaivite sages and maybe some Indians and maybe some Confucian folks hanging out there, and I don't want to leave out the Sufis, or right, and there's always a couple of Christians in the mix, right? Wow, that's not it. actually everyone has access to enlightenment. And actually the experience of heroism is almost always an ordinary person experiencing enlightenment. And one of the movie scenes which appeared somewhere around 2016, 17, 18, when they remade that classical epic movie from the William Marston comic book, Wonder Woman. Marston was a professor at Harvard who was a post-conventional, fascinating man, married to Elizabeth. And then there was a third woman who was a student at Harvard who became their lover, and they created a kind of triangle, and he gets fired from Harvard. Not a great idea in the 20s, right, or the 30s or the 40s, right? And the three of them actually live together, and he's completely like inspired by these muses, can't get a job, and he writes Wonder Woman. That's where Wonder Woman comes from, right? And it's a fascinating and beautiful story. But actually Wonder Woman is infused with Eros. Wonder Woman is infused with allurement. That's where she gets her energy, her Eros. So they remade Wonder Woman sometime in the, it was 2015, 2018, something like that. And there's a gorgeous scene. Wonder Woman falls in love. She comes from the island of the Amazonian women. She actually has a download of kind of goddess bloodline. And she meets this kind of dashing and very kind of interesting and, you know, wonderful Steve, who's a pilot who gets washed up on her island. And they somehow come together on this mission, right, to actually stop, right, this apparent prophecy that the god of war will appear and say that humanity is not really worthwhile and just destroy humanity. And he's kind of working behind the scenes, this Ares kind of archetype of war and destruction. And she's going to kind of challenge that, because that's her mission with this Steve. And there's this very beautiful, subtle unfolding of their relationship. And at a certain moment, right at the very apex of the film, when Ares reveals himself, right, Steve can't help Wonder Woman as that battle begins between them. But there's a plane which is filled with gas that will explode and just destroy, you know, the entire area and cause, you know, horrific death and destruction. And so the only thing he can do in this moment in the airfield is he's going to get that plane, which is flammable, and he's going to do the only thing he can. He's going to fly it right up into its flammability, as it were, and explode it. So you actually see the scene as he's climbing and climbing and climbing, right after they've talked to each other, as he's running to the plane. And he says, you know, I don't know if this is going to help or not help, but this is the only thing I can do now. This is what there is to do. And he climbs, and his face gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And you see, wow, that's true self. Right? True self is when I realize I'm intimate with everyone. I'm not just a separate self. Right? And I'll die for everyone because everyone's in me and I'm part of everyone. And there's no separation. And if I'm genuinely a separate self, what part of me would actually self-obliterate into nothingness? We just wouldn't do it. Right? That which allures us, right, to lay down our lives, right, on the altar of a higher intimacy and a higher love and a higher truth and a higher goodness and a higher beauty, is actually an ever already present realization that I'm true self, meaning true self means total number of true selves is one. We're all part of the same true self. We're in a field of intimacy together. And in that field is ultimately one field. It's a seamless field. That's the realization of true self, right? It's not a kind of effacing of personality, right? It's not a kind of the way I usually describe meditation. The personality disappears and I'm sitting going, Om, right? And I get increasingly more boring, right, and sterile as I meditate on the nature of awareness. Really? No, actually, right, the interior of awareness is allurement. Allurement is the dazzling field of allurement, which is its insides are lined with love. That's the original statement of Solomon and the Solomon tradition. So that's what we understand. That's the realization of Steve, that as he's taking his plane up and his face gets clear and he realizes I'm part of the field of allurement. And I, as the field, it's not that I'm giving myself up for the field. I am the field. The field is acting through me. Right? It's not that I'm saving evolution. I am evolution. Right? I am allurement. Right? It's not someplace else. We always think it's someplace else. I'm living in a world. No, I am the world. The world is me. I am the intimate universe. Right? And as the intimate universe becomes alive in me, and that's the beginning of the realization of Homo Amor. Right? It's true self. But there is no true self, and it's already implicit in what we said. But let's really, if we can, we'll just dive in for a second because it's just so gorgeous. True self, right? The realization that I'm part of the one, plus my irreducibly unique perspective, plus my irreducibly unique quality of intimacy, because I'm a unique taste, I'm a unique quality of intimacy. If we sit together in silence, there'll be a unique quality to that silence. If I sit or you sit with someone else in silence who has a different unique taste, a different unique quality of intimacy, there'll be a different taste or quality of intimacy to that silence. Right? So every human being is not just a unique perspective and not just a fully unique atomic structure, a fully unique cellular structure, right? A fully unique, right? You might express it as cellular atomic structure genetic code. Right? Not only is my immune system irreducibly unique, right? My entire nerve cable system, 1,000,000 miles of, et cetera. Right? I'm not just 50 trillion cells, I'm 50 trillion cells of separate parts that self-organize into a larger whole, which is an irreducibly unique expression of intimacy, of love. That's what I am. I'm a unique configuration of intimacy. So my true self, meaning my realization that I'm part of the one, plus my irreducibly unique quality of intimacy, my perspective, my mind, my heart, when that comes together, that equals unique self. Now, when that unique self, right, actually realizes I'm not separate from evolution, I am evolution. And evolution is appearing as me. Right? The evolutionary impulse, right, pulses in me. The dynamic throb of reality making love to itself is what's throbbing in me. Right? Right? My throbbing, my openness, right? My heart opening is reality's heart opening in me. That's unique self. And that's what we call evolutionary unique self, meaning the unique self who lives in an evolutionary context. Evolution's not a theory out there, right? You look around at all the departments of study, evolution's something happening out there, which we, in the real, we study. That's ridiculous. I mean, evolutionary science actually says the exact opposite of that. Evolution is the realization that reality is not a fact. It's a story. It's going somewhere. It has a telos, or a goal. And the goal of reality is not superimposed by Jack on Mars, right? Some alienated, distant, dissociated God who's not inherent in reality and is waving her wand. But actually, the telos of reality is self-evident from within. The inherent, ceaseless creativity of reality seeks ever greater life. And reality seeks life. Reality seeks ever greater goodness, ever greater truth, ever greater beauty. And gorgeously, reality always seeks more love. So people will try and dismiss that by saying, well, let's take a look. There's always an in-group and an out-group, right? And the in-group's always killing the out-group. Well, that's true. Because for much of reality, people couldn't see beyond their in-group. So the real reading is there's always an in-group of people madly loving each other, but then they mistakenly think that they're the ones. And therefore they've got to actually defend against the people out there. So the evolution of love, the evolution of intimacy is the realization is there are no externalities. There's no one on the outside. Right? I don't need to create an inside by putting someone else on the outside. We're actually all in the circle. No one's left out of the circle. That's the evolution of intimacy, right? I actually keep expanding the circle till actually there are no externalities, right? Evolutionary intimacy is the realization that there are no externalities, that no one's going to be left behind, right? No one's left behind. Everyone's on the court, and we're on the court together. It's a stunning realization. So yes, there have been in-groups and out-groups, but the evolution of intimacy is to begin to keep expanding the circle until more and more and more of reality is included on the inside, until ultimately I realize there is no inside and outside. It's all inside. Like, wow, that's the evolution of intimacy. That's where we're going.